The moment I heard Amanda's voice through the cracked bedroom door, I froze in place. "I told you, he doesn't suspect a thing," she whispered, her tone low but unmistakably smug. My heart started hammering in my chest. I was standing there, groceries in one hand and my keys dangling from the other, when her words hit me like a freight train. "We just have to keep Olivia on the same page. She's been good about covering for me so far." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Amanda, my wife of 20 years, was talking about me. And Olivia? My daughter? What the hell was going on? I stepped closer, trying not to make a sound as I pressed my ear to the door. The next thing she said sent an icy chill down my spine. "Nate says he can't wait for our weekend together. I told him to be careful, though. James is sharp when he wants to be." My legs nearly gave out from under me. Nate? A weekend together? My wife was planning a trip with another man, and my own daughter was helping her hide it from me? This wasn't just betrayal, it was a conspiracy. For a second, I wanted to barge in, demand answers, and lay all the cards on the table. But I stopped myself. If this was the game they wanted to play, I wasn't going to show my hand just yet. No, I needed to know the full truth first. And once I had it, Amanda and Nate, and maybe even Olivia, were going to regret ever thinking they could fool me. I backed away from the door, every fiber of my being screaming for revenge. But this wasn't going to be a rage-fueled outburst. I was going to take my time, plan every move, and make them pay in ways they wouldn't see coming. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind raced with questions, doubts, and, most of all, anger. The woman I had spent 2 decades of my life with, the mother of my child, was cheating on me. Worse, Olivia, my sweet, intelligent daughter, the one I'd worked double shifts for to pay off her college loans, was in on it. The betrayal wasn't just Amanda's anymore, it was a family affair. But I wasn't going to blow up without proof. That's the mistake most men make, they react too soon, give away their leverage. Not me. If Amanda thought I was sharp, she was about to find out just how right she was. The next morning, I acted like everything was normal. I kissed Amanda on the cheek as she leaned against the kitchen counter scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up, mumbling something about meeting a friend for lunch. A friend? Yeah, right. Olivia walked in a few minutes later, her eyes glued to her phone as usual. She gave me a quick, distracted morning, like she always did, but for the first time, I saw her differently. Was she texting Amanda's lover? Was she part of this whole charade? The thought made my stomach turn. "Olivia," I said, keeping my tone casual, "any plans today?" She glanced up at me, her expression unreadable. "Just studying with Kelsey," she said, referring to her best friend. "Why?" I smiled, pretending not to notice the hesitation in her voice. "Just curious. Thought maybe we could grab lunch later." She hesitated, then shook her head. "Maybe another time. I've got a lot to do." Liar. Once they both left the house, Amanda claiming she had a spa day, and Olivia rushing out with her backpack, I got to work. First, I went through Amanda's closet, looking for anything that could give me a clue about this weekend trip she was planning. At first, there was nothing. Just the usual mess of shoes, dresses, and overpriced handbags. But then I spotted a small, zipped travel bag tucked away behind her winter coats. Inside, I found lingerie I'd never seen before, lacy, expensive, and definitely not something she'd ever worn for me. The rage bubbled up again, but I forced it down. There was more. I needed more. I moved to her office desk, rummaging through drawers and papers until I found her laptop. Amanda wasn't tech-savvy, and luckily for me, she hadn't thought to password protect her email. Within minutes, I was scrolling through her inbox. Most of it was boring, work emails, newsletters, but then I hit the jackpot. A thread with Nate G. Jim. The same name that had popped up on her phone. The emails weren't as explicit as I expected, but they didn't need to be. Looking forward to this weekend, and last night was incredible, were enough to make my blood boil. But what really got me was the attached hotel reservation. 2 nights at a 5-star resort in the mountains. I recognized the date, just 2 days away. I wasn't done yet. Olivia was next. I needed to know how deep she was in this mess. Her room was immaculate, as always, but her laptop was sitting on the desk, open. A quick glance revealed her text messages synced to her computer. Bingo. Scrolling through her texts, I found exactly what I was looking for. Messages between Olivia and Amanda. Amanda, make sure to tell Dad you're at Kelsey's this weekend. He can't know. Olivia, don't worry, Mom. He won't find out. I've got this. There it was, in black and white. My daughter, my flesh and blood, was helping my wife cheat on me. I felt a sick twist in my gut. How could she do this to me? To us? Did I mean so little to her? I sat down on her bed, my head in my hands, trying to process it all. The betrayal felt like a physical weight on my chest. But this wasn't the time to fall apart. If I wanted to make Amanda and her lover pay, if I wanted Olivia to understand the gravity of her actions, I had to keep my cool. By the time Amanda and Olivia came home that evening, I had a plan. Amanda walked in first, all smiles and fake cheer. "Hey, honey. How was your day?" she asked, like she wasn't hiding a dagger behind her back. "Busy," I said, forcing a smile of my own. "You?" "Oh, you know, just the usual," she said, brushing past me to put her bag down. Olivia followed soon after, giving me a quick nod before heading upstairs. They were both so comfortable, so confident in their lies. It was almost impressive. I waited until late that night, when Amanda was asleep, to make my next move. Sneaking into her phone, I forwarded all her emails and text messages to myself. Every damning detail, every lie, every betrayal, I had it all. Then I did the same with Olivia's laptop. By the time I was done, I had more evidence than I needed. The rage that had been simmering inside me was now ice cold. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. They had betrayed me, and I was going to make damn sure they both paid for it. 2 days. That's all the time I had before Amanda's little, romantic getaway. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Let them think they were winning. Let them think they'd fooled me. They had no idea what was coming. The morning Amanda was set to leave for her spa weekend, I could feel the energy shift in the house. She was nervous, but not in a way that anyone who didn't know the truth would notice. I caught her looking at me a little too carefully, gauging whether I was suspicious. I wasn't about to let on. If I'd learned anything over the past 2 days, it was that the best revenge wasn't rushed. It was planned. She came downstairs in a casual outfit, jeans, a cardigan, and the kind of makeup that made her look effortlessly beautiful. The kind of look that might fool someone into thinking she wasn't headed for a weekend of deceit. "You sure you'll be okay without me?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I think I can survive 2 days," I said with a chuckle, sipping my coffee. "You deserve the break." She smiled, but I saw the flicker of guilt flash across her face. Good. Let it eat at her. Olivia was at the table too, scrolling on her phone, pretending not to listen to our conversation. I knew she was complicit in this, but confronting her now wasn't the right move. No, I needed to keep her in the dark for just a little longer. "Drive safe," I said as Amanda grabbed her bag and kissed me on the cheek. It took everything in me not to pull away. "Let me know when you get there." "I will," she said, her voice chipper. And just like that, she was out the door. As soon as I heard the car pull out of the driveway, I was in motion. I had already taken the day off work under the guise of needing a mental health day. In reality, I had bigger plans. Step 1 was confirming that Amanda was going exactly where I thought she was. I opened the tracker app I'd installed on her phone the night before. Sure enough, her location was pinging from the highway headed north. She was on her way to the resort. Satisfied, I moved on to step 2. I needed eyes on the scene, and I wasn't about to let this go without proof that couldn't be argued. I contacted a private investigator, a guy named Rick, who came highly recommended by a friend. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy and understood the stakes immediately. "Don't worry, James," he said when I explained the situation. "I'll get you everything you need. Photos, video, the works. By the time I'm done, she won't have a leg to stand on." I thanked him and wired over the deposit. Rick would meet Amanda and her lover at the resort, and I'd finally have concrete evidence of her betrayal. But I wasn't stopping there. While Rick was handling the surveillance, I was busy laying the groundwork for the next phase of my plan. First, I went through Amanda's financials. She had her own credit cards, separate from mine, and I'd always trusted her to manage them responsibly. But trust was no longer a part of our equation. I logged into her accounts. She'd foolishly used the same password for everything, and saw thousands of dollars in charges I didn't recognize. Spa treatments, luxury dinners, and shopping sprees. And then there were the hotel bookings. She'd been dipping into our savings for months to fund her little escapades. Without hesitation, I froze her credit cards. Let her try to pay for her weekend getaway with Nate without a functioning wallet. I also transferred all the money from our joint savings account into one under my name. She might have thought she was clever, but she'd underestimated how ruthless I could be when provoked. By the time Olivia came downstairs for lunch, I was sitting at the dining table, acting like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Want to grab a bite together?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. She hesitated. Actually, Kelsey's picking me up soon. We're working on a project." "Liar." "Oh, really? What class?" I asked, feigning interest. "Psychology," she said quickly, her eyes darting away from mine. "It's this big group thing." I nodded, letting her think she'd sold the lie. "Sounds intense. You'll let me know if you need help, right?" "Yeah, of course," she mumbled, already heading back upstairs. The moment she was out of sight, I made my move. I logged into Olivia's phone account, another shared password, another mistake, and checked her recent calls and texts. Sure enough, there were messages to Amanda and an unknown number that I could only assume belonged to Nate. She wasn't just covering for Amanda, she was actively coordinating with her. I felt a pang of sadness mixed with the anger. Olivia wasn't just some accomplice, she was my daughter. I'd raised her, loved her, sacrificed for her. How could she do this to me? But the time for tears was over. If she wanted to align herself with Amanda, she'd have to face the consequences too. By the afternoon, everything was in place. Rick was en route to the resort, Amanda's finances were in shambles, and Olivia had no idea I was 2 steps ahead of her. All that was left now was to wait. But I wasn't sitting idle. No, I had one more trick up my sleeve, one that would ensure Amanda's lies came crashing down in the most spectacular fashion. As the hours ticked by, I found myself oddly calm. The storm was coming, but for the first time in days, I felt in control. Amanda and Nate thought they were untouchable. Olivia thought she was clever. They were all wrong. The following day dawned with a strange sense of anticipation, like the calm before a storm. Amanda was already at her luxurious mountain resort with Nate, thinking she had outsmarted me. Olivia, meanwhile, was out of the house, supposedly studying again. Little did either of them know, every piece of their deceit was about to come crashing down. Rick, the private investigator, had sent me an update early that morning. He was already at the resort, discreetly stationed in the lobby with a camera that could capture crystal-clear footage from across the room. I'd given him explicit instructions. I didn't just want a few blurry photos of Amanda and Nate holding hands. No, I wanted undeniable, airtight evidence. I wanted footage of them kissing, checking into the room together, everything. Rick didn't disappoint. "James," he said over the phone, his voice steady and professional. "They're here. I've already got them at the reception desk. She's using her real name for the booking, so there's no doubt it's her. I'll keep you posted." "Perfect," I replied, my voice cold. "Make sure to get everything. No detail is too small." The thought of Amanda and Nate strolling around the resort, laughing and indulging in their betrayal, made my blood boil. But instead of letting the anger consume me, I funneled it into action. This wasn't just about catching Amanda red-handed, it was about making sure she couldn't wriggle her way out of this mess. And for that, I needed to play my cards right. Back at home, I started drafting a letter to my lawyer. I'd already done my research on divorce proceedings in our state, and I knew the evidence I was gathering would give me the upper hand. Adultery wasn't just a moral failing. In the eyes of the court, it could shift the balance in my favor when it came to property division and custody. Not that custody was an issue anymore. Olivia was technically an adult, but the principle of it mattered. By mid-afternoon, Rick sent me a series of photos that made my stomach churn. There was Amanda, her arm draped around Nate as they walked through the resort's courtyard. They looked carefree, happy even. The sight of her smiling at him the way she used to smile at me was like a dagger to the heart. But I swallowed the pain and focused on the bigger picture. This wasn't the time to wallow in self-pity. It was time to act. That evening, I decided it was time to confront Olivia. I waited until she came home, her usual chipper demeanor intact, as though she hadn't been lying to me for weeks. She walked into the kitchen and froze when she saw me sitting at the table, her laptop open in front of me. I'd left the incriminating text messages with Amanda pulled up on the screen. "Sit down," I said, my tone sharp and unforgiving. Her face went pale. "Dad, what's going on?" "You tell me, Olivia." I gestured to the laptop. "What exactly have you and your mother been hiding from me? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been helping her cheat on me." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," I snapped, slamming my hand on the table. "I've seen the messages. I know about Nate. I know you've been covering for her." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't let them soften me. "Not this time. Dad, I didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what, Olivia? Didn't mean to betray your own father? Didn't mean to help your mother destroy our family?" She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. I didn't know what else to do. She begged me, "Dad." She said you wouldn't understand, that you'd get angry and everything would fall apart. She promised it was just a phase, that it didn't mean anything. "Didn't mean anything?" I barked, rising to my feet. "Your mother has been sneaking around behind my back for months. She's spending my money, lying to my face, and you're telling me it doesn't mean anything?" "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I stared at her, a mix of fury and disappointment coursing through me. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Olivia. You made a choice. You chose to side with her instead of me. And now, you're going to have to deal with the consequences." I didn't wait for her to respond. I grabbed my coat and left the house, needing to clear my head. The confrontation had drained me, but it had also solidified my resolve. Amanda and Olivia had both underestimated me, but that was about to change. Rick called me later that night with an update. He'd captured footage of Amanda and Nate having dinner at the resort's upscale restaurant. They'd been laughing, leaning into each other, and, most damning of all, sharing a kiss over their wine glasses. The footage was exactly what I needed. "They're heading back to their room now," Rick said. "I'll stay on it." "Good," I replied. "Keep me posted." When I hung up, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. The pieces were all falling into place. Amanda thought she was living out her fantasy weekend, blissfully unaware that her lies were unraveling in real time. And Olivia, well, she had some serious soul-searching to do. This wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. The following morning, I woke up early, my chest buzzing with nervous energy. Today was the day everything came crashing down. Amanda's deceit, Olivia's betrayal, Nate's smug confidence, all of it would meet the reckoning they deserved. Rick had already sent me the final batch of evidence, photos of Amanda and Nate entering their hotel room together and leaving hours later, looking disheveled but pleased with themselves. It was the nail in the coffin, and I couldn't wait to deliver it. But I wasn't going to call Amanda or confront her in some predictable, cliché way. No, I wanted her to feel the ground crumble beneath her feet. So I called Rick and arranged for one last surprise. I was driving to the resort myself. The trip took 3 hours, but every mile felt like a countdown to something monumental. I'd rehearsed the confrontation in my mind 100 times, picturing Amanda's face when she realized the game was up. Would she cry? Beg for forgiveness? Or would she double down, twisting the knife with her lies? When I arrived at the resort, Rick was waiting in his car near the entrance. He handed me a folder containing everything: photos, videos, copies of Amanda's hotel receipts. "This is everything you need," he said. "They're still in the restaurant having breakfast." "Perfect," I replied, gripping the folder like it was a weapon. Time to finish this. I walked into the resort with a calmness that surprised even me. The lobby was elegant, filled with the sound of soft jazz and the murmur of well-dressed guests. None of them had any idea that a storm was about to erupt. I spotted Amanda and Nate immediately, seated at a table near the window. She was laughing at something he said, her hand brushing his arm. It was sickening. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and marched over to their table. The moment Amanda saw me, her face turned ghostly white. Nate froze mid-bite, his fork suspended in the air. "James," Amanda stammered, her voice cracking. What are you doing here?" I dropped the folder on the table with a thud, causing both of them to flinch. "I think the better question, Amanda, is what you're doing here. And with him, of all people." Nate's eyes darted to Amanda, then back to me. "Look, man, I don't know what you've heard, but—" "Shut your mouth," I snapped, my voice low and venomous. "You don't get to talk." Amanda tried to stand, her hands trembling. "James, please, let's not make a scene. We can talk about this." "A scene?" I laughed bitterly. "Oh, we're way past worrying about scenes, Amanda. Did you think I wouldn't find out? That you could just sneak around with this clown and I'd be none the wiser?" She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "I have everything, Amanda. The texts, the emails, the photos. Hell, I even have your daughter's messages helping you cover this up. So don't even think about denying it." Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might actually start crying. But then her expression hardened. "You were never around, James," she said, her voice rising. "You buried yourself in work and left me to feel invisible. Is it any wonder I found someone who actually paid attention to me? Don't you dare try to spin this on me," I said, my anger flaring. "I worked my ass off to provide for this family. You think fancy vacations and Olivia's tuition paid for themselves? While I was sacrificing everything, you were out here with him." Nate tried to interject again. "Look, maybe we should just—" I said shut up. I barked, turning to him. What kind of man sleeps with another man's wife and then sits here acting like he's done nothing wrong? Amanda grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Stop it, James. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself? I yanked my arm free. The only person who should be embarrassed is you. You've humiliated me, Amanda. You've destroyed our family. And for what? For this? The entire restaurant was watching now, their breakfast forgotten as they gawked at the unfolding drama. But I didn't care. Let them see. Let them all see what kind of person Amanda really was. I leaned in close, lowering my voice so only she and Nate could hear. You think this is over? It's not. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you'd never met me. The credit cards? Frozen. The bank account? Drained. And the divorce papers? They'll be on your desk by Monday. Amanda's eyes widened in panic. You can't do that. Watch me. I straightened up, my chest heaving with the weight of everything I just unleashed. Enjoy your weekend, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. It's the last one you'll have on my dime. With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving Amanda and Nate to sit in the wreckage of their little fantasy. As I stepped into the fresh mountain air, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: freedom. The lies, the deceit, the constant second-guessing, it was all behind me now. Amanda had made her choice, and now, I was making mine. When I got back to my car, my phone buzzed with a message from Olivia. Dad, can we talk? Please. I stared at the screen for a moment, debating whether to reply. She'd betrayed me too, but maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to salvage something with her. But Amanda? She was already a ghost in my mind. Driving back from the resort, my mind was spinning. The confrontation with Amanda had been cathartic, but the war was far from over. Her betrayal was like a deep wound that hadn't even begun to scab over. And Olivia? That was the part that hurt the most. My daughter, my flesh and blood, had been an accomplice to Amanda's lies. The thought was almost too much to bear. When I pulled into the driveway, the house felt eerily quiet. I wasn't sure if Olivia was home, but her message from earlier still hung over me. Dad, can we talk? Please. I wasn't ready to have that conversation yet. I needed time to figure out what I wanted to say, and more importantly, how I felt about her role in all of this. So, I walked inside, dropped my keys on the counter, and headed straight for the liquor cabinet. A stiff drink was the only thing I wanted right now. The whiskey burned as it slid down my throat, but it did little to numb the anger and sadness swirling inside me. I stared at the empty glass for what felt like an eternity before I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. Dad? Olivia's voice was soft, hesitant. I didn't turn around. What do you want, Olivia? She paused, and I could feel her struggling to find the right words. I know you're mad. I know I messed up. But I need you to hear me out. Finally, I turned to face her. She looked small, vulnerable, standing there in the kitchen doorway. For a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who'd run to me with scraped knees and big dreams. But then I remembered the texts, the lies, the betrayal, and my heart hardened. You helped your mother cheat on me, I said, my voice cold. You lied to my face, Olivia. Do you have any idea how much that hurts? She flinched as if I'd slapped her. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Dad. I didn't know what to do. Mom, she said things that made me feel like I had to protect her. Protect her? I scoffed, slamming my glass on the counter. From what? From the consequences of her own actions? Olivia, she wasn't the victim here. I was. Our family was. Tears streamed down her face, but I wasn't ready to let her off the hook. You knew what she was doing, I continued, my voice rising. You knew she was sneaking around, lying, using me, and you helped her. Do you have any idea how betrayed I feel? By both of you? I didn't mean for it to go this far, she sobbed. I thought it would just blow over. Mom said it was just a phase. She promised it wouldn't affect us. Well, she lied to you too, didn't she? I snapped. Because it did affect us, Olivia. It tore this family apart. She stood there, shaking, her hands clutching at the sleeves of her sweatshirt. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered. I'm so sorry. For a moment, I considered telling her to leave, to go stay with Amanda and let them deal with the mess they'd created. But deep down, I couldn't bring myself to do it. No matter how angry I was, Olivia was still my daughter. She was young, impressionable, and Amanda had clearly manipulated her. Sorry isn't enough, I said finally, my voice softening just a fraction. You have to earn back my trust, Olivia. And that's not going to happen overnight. She nodded, her tears falling faster now. I'll do whatever it takes, Dad. I promise. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The emotions swirling inside me were too overwhelming to put into words. Instead, I turned back to the liquor cabinet and poured myself another drink. The next day, I met with my lawyer. Her name was Melissa, and she was sharp, confident, and exactly the kind of person I needed in my corner. I laid everything out for her, the evidence Rick had gathered, the financial records showing Amanda's reckless spending, and, most importantly, the texts and emails that proved her affair. You've got a strong case, Melissa said, flipping through the photos Rick had provided. Adultery is a significant factor in divorce proceedings in this state. With this evidence, you'll have the upper hand when it comes to dividing assets. And the house? I asked. I don't want her to get it. It's mine. I paid for it. We'll fight for it, Melissa assured me. But I need you to be prepared for Amanda to push back. Affairs can get messy, and she might try to paint you as the bad guy to save face. She can try, I said, leaning back in my chair. But I have the truth on my side. As I left Melissa's office, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, knowing I had a solid plan in place, anger, knowing Amanda would still try to fight me, and sadness, knowing that this was the end of the life I'd spent 20 years building. But most of all, I felt a sense of determination. Amanda and Nate might have thought they could walk all over me, but they were about to find out just how wrong they were. That evening, Amanda called. It was the first time we'd spoken since the confrontation at the resort. Her voice was shaky, almost desperate. James, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, I replied coldly. You made your choices, Amanda. Now you have to live with them. Please, she pleaded. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. Can't we just? Don't, I interrupted, my voice like steel. Don't try to spin this. You lied, Amanda. You betrayed me. And now, you're going to pay for it. She was silent for a long moment before whispering, You'll regret this, James. Maybe, I said, hanging up. But not as much as you will. Amanda's words, You'll regret this, James, echoed in my mind long after I hung up the phone. It wasn't fear I felt, it was disgust. She had the audacity to threaten me after everything she'd done, as if I was the villain in this story. The gall was almost comical. But I didn't have time to dwell on her empty words, I had bigger plans in motion. The next morning, Olivia emerged from her room, looking like she hadn't slept all night. Her eyes were puffy, and her shoulders slumped under an invisible weight. I didn't feel sorry for her, but I also wasn't in the mood to argue. I ignored her as I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. Dad, she began hesitantly, standing a few feet away. I know I don't deserve it, but, is there any way we can fix this? I stared at her for a moment, letting the silence stretch. That depends, Olivia, I said finally. Are you willing to be honest with me from now on? No more lies. No more covering for your mother. Yes, she said quickly, nodding. I swear. I'll do whatever it takes. Then you can start by answering this, I said, my voice calm but firm. How long have you known about Nate? She hesitated, her cheeks flushing with shame. A few months, she admitted. Mom told me about him during the summer. She said you were too busy with work, and she needed someone to talk to. I didn't think it would turn into this. Someone to talk to, I repeated bitterly. And you believe that? Or did you just not care? I didn't know what to believe, she cried. She's my mom, Dad. I didn't want to choose between you two. Well, congratulations, I said, standing up and grabbing my coffee. You chose. And now you're going to have to deal with the consequences. She didn't say anything as I walked out of the kitchen. I could hear her start crying again, but I didn't look back. She needed to feel this, to understand the damage she'd done. Maybe then, someday, we could rebuild some kind of trust. Later that day, Amanda called again. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see how low she was willing to stoop. James, she began, her voice softer this time. I've been thinking, maybe we can work this out. For Olivia's sake. I laughed out loud, the sound harsh and bitter. Work this out? Are you serious? Amanda, you've been lying to me for months. You spent our savings on your little affair. You roped our daughter into covering for you. And now you want to work this out? Do you even hear yourself? I know I screwed up, she said, her voice trembling. But I love you, James. I still do. You love me? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Funny way of showing it. Was it love when you lied to my face? When you snuck around with Nate? When you used my hard-earned money to pay for your hotel rooms and God knows what else? She was silent for a moment, then tried a different angle. I wasn't happy, James. You never had time for me anymore. I felt invisible. Don't you dare blame this on me, I snapped. I was working my ass off to provide for you and Olivia. I gave you everything, Amanda. And you threw it away for some loser who probably doesn't even care about you. That's not true, she said defensively. Nate cares about me. I couldn't help but laugh again. Oh, does he? Well, let's see how much he cares when he finds out you're broke. Your credit cards are frozen, Amanda. Your name is off the savings account. You have nothing. Her gasp on the other end of the line was deeply satisfying. You can't do that, she said weakly. I already did, I said coldly. You've made your bed, Amanda. Now lie in it. You're going to regret this, she said again, but this time her voice was shaking. Maybe, I replied. But at least I'll still have my dignity. Can you say the same? I hung up before she could respond, feeling a strange sense of triumph. It wasn't over yet, but I was winning. For the first time in months, I was the one in control. That evening, I received an email from Rick, the private investigator. He'd compiled all the evidence into a neat little folder, photos, videos, and a timeline of Amanda's affair. He even included a written statement summarizing everything for the divorce proceedings. It was exactly what I needed to solidify my case. I forwarded the folder to Melissa, my lawyer, with a simple message, let's end this. A few hours later, Melissa called. This is perfect, James, she said. With this evidence, we'll be able to push for an expedited divorce. Amanda won't have a leg to stand on. Good, I said. I want this over with as soon as possible. Just be prepared, Melissa warned. Amanda's going to fight back. Affairs like this tend to bring out the worst in people. Let her try, I said. She's already lost. As I hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction, knowing I was finally taking control of the situation. Sadness, knowing that my marriage was truly over. And anger, knowing that Amanda and Olivia had betrayed me so deeply. But above all, I felt a sense of determination. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about rebuilding my life, on my terms. That night, I sat alone in the living room, nursing a glass of whiskey. The house felt emptier than ever, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. Amanda's lies were unraveling, Olivia was finally starting to face the consequences of her actions, and I had the upper hand in the divorce. The battle wasn't over yet, but I was ready for whatever came next. Amanda thought she could destroy me, but she was wrong. I wasn't just surviving, I was fighting back. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation and fallout. Amanda's betrayal had left a scar, but I wasn't about to let it define me. I was focused, calculated, and ready to see this through to the bitter end. I met Melissa again 2 days later to finalize the divorce papers. With all the evidence Rick had collected, there was no question about how this would play out. Amanda had no legal grounds to contest anything, and Melissa assured me the judge would favor my case. Once Amanda gets served, expect fireworks, Melissa said, her tone professional but tinged with amusement. She's not the type to go down quietly. I wouldn't expect anything less, I replied, signing the final page with a steady hand. That evening, Amanda came home, or, rather, she barged into the house like a storm, slamming the door behind her. She had clearly been crying, her mascara streaked and her hair disheveled. She must have received the divorce papers I had sent through Melissa earlier in the day. Good. What the hell is this? She demanded, waving the papers in my face. It's exactly what it looks like, I said calmly, leaning against the counter with a glass of water in hand. A divorce. You don't get to cheat on me, use me, and then act surprised when I decide I'm done. She threw the papers on the counter, her hands trembling with fury. You can't do this to me, James. I made a mistake, okay? But that doesn't mean you get to destroy my life. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. Destroy your life? Amanda, you did that all on your own. All I did was refuse to let you drag me down with you. You're being cruel, she spat, her voice cracking. I thought we could fix this, but you're not even giving me a chance. A chance? I raised an eyebrow, my tone icy. You had plenty of chances, Amanda. Every time you lied to my face, every time you ran off to meet Nate, every time you used Olivia to cover for you, you had a chance to stop. But you didn't. So don't stand there and pretend to be the victim. Her shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I thought she might break down. But then her expression hardened, and the venom returned to her voice. You think you're so righteous, don't you? But you're just a bitter, controlling man who didn't know how to keep his wife happy. Maybe, I said with a shrug. But I'd rather be bitter and alone than stay married to someone who has no respect for me. The words hit their mark. She flinched, her eyes narrowing as she realized she wasn't going to win this fight. Fine, she hissed. But don't think for a second that Olivia will stay on your side. She's my daughter, James. Not yours. The mention of Olivia sent a fresh wave of anger through me, but I kept my composure. Olivia is old enough to make her own choices, I said. And if she chooses to stand by you after everything you've done, that's on her. But don't think for a second that you can use her as a weapon against me. Amanda opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. We're done here, Amanda. You can pick up the rest of your things tomorrow. Until then, I think it's best if you stay somewhere else. For a moment, She looked like she might argue, but then she grabbed her bag and stormed out without another word. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the house, leaving behind a heavy silence. Later that night, Olivia came downstairs, her face pale and uncertain. "Mom just called," she said quietly. "She's at a friend's place." "I know," I said, not looking up from the stack of bills I was sorting. "She's really upset, Dad." "Good," I said bluntly, tossing a bill into the pile. "She should be." Olivia hesitated, then sat down across from me at the table. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I feel like I've ruined everything." "You didn't ruin everything," I said, finally looking up at her. "Your mother did. But you helped her, Olivia. And that's something you're going to have to live with." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I just want things to go back to how they were." "They can't," I said firmly. "But we can try to move forward. If you want to rebuild my trust, you'll have to prove to me that you're not going to choose lies over loyalty again. Can you do that?" "Yes," she whispered, wiping her tears. "I promise, Dad. I'll make it up to you." "Good," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Because I'm done letting people walk all over me." The divorce proceedings moved quickly. With the mountain of evidence against her, Amanda had no choice but to agree to my terms. I kept the house, my savings, and most of our assets. She was left with her personal belongings and the wreckage of her reputation. I heard through mutual friends that Nate had dumped her shortly after the resort fiasco. Apparently, he wasn't as devoted to her as she'd claimed. The irony was almost too sweet. As for Olivia, she stayed with me. It wasn't easy at first, our relationship was strained, and rebuilding trust took time. But slowly, we found our way back to something resembling normalcy. She even started going to therapy, something I encouraged, and it seemed to help her process everything that had happened. Months later, as I sat on the back porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Amanda's betrayal had shattered my life, but in the end, it had also freed me. I was no longer trapped in a marriage built on lies. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to start over. If there was one thing I'd learned from all of this, it was this: never ignore the warning signs. And when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time.